Whether you're on episode 1 of your podcast or episode 300, you want your content to reach as many people as possible. At the same time, your listeners expect you to deliver value each and every time you air. They tune in each week, ready for you to share your expertise and your wisdom, and they are ready to hear your message and the message of the guests you invite to join you. You have content, you have an audience, and you have big ideas that you want to share with the world. And because of these things, you have the perfect ingredients to write a book based on your podcast content. You can leverage your existing podcast season to create a compelling business book that elevates your brand. As a podcast host, you already have a certain level of credibility. When you publish a book and reintroduce yourself to your listeners as an author, you bring them with you to a higher level of authority. A book can help you shape your brand and carry your podcast to even greater heights than you can imagine for yourself. I hear you asking, Chrissy, how can I write a book when I barely have time to keep up with managing the podcast? My friend, let me tell you, there are 5 easy ways you can leverage the content that you have already created for your podcast to generate the content that you need to build out your book. Number 1, guide your listeners on a journey. This journey can look a lot like your content planning for the podcast season. How do you decide which episodes to air when? You are already taking your listener on a journey. You already know which episodes are going to air when. You can replicate that journey and elevate it to book level status. Have you heard of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey? He studied storytelling and mythology from around the globe and identified what it takes to tell a good story. He wrote The Hero's Journey way back in 1949, and its framework is still going strong today. It has been the basis for most major books and movies since 1949, and the extensive process is a 17-stage journey that takes the main character through departure, initiation, and return. Now, there is literally an entire world within Campbell's thesis, and I recommend studying it as a masterclass in storytelling. For now, stay with me on departure, initiation, and return. Departure is where your book starts. You are taking your reader from point A to point B. From your podcast, think of it as your intro. When you put together an episode of your podcast, you are already weaving together the departure, initiation, and return for your listener. You're opening strong. You're opening with, hey, this is establishing where we are in the world. Your opening establishes the listener's experience of what you are doing. An initiation is a challenge that you introduce to your reader. It is the learning experience that you are sharing. In your podcast episode, the initiation is the topic of the episode. It is what you are overcoming, what you are recovering from, what you are learning, and what you are sharing with your listener in that moment. Now, return is how you finish strong. You leave the reader with a lesson or message that they can carry with them in their daily lives. This is something like the call to action at the end of your podcast episode. Read the show notes for important links mentioned in today's episode. Tune in next week to hear about my next topic with our surprise guest. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. It's the next steps that you want your listeners to take. Your return leaves room for a sequel. Your perspective and experience are what each of your listeners and now your readers signed up to follow. Bring them along with you for the journey and make their time with you well spent. Now, number 2. You can transcribe the best parts of your interviews. You already know which of your episodes have the highest download rate because you have that information as part of your podcast analytics. Use that data to give your listeners more of what you know that they want. If episode 7 was one of your most listened to episodes, make sure that content is in your book. This has been done at a master level by Tim Ferriss. Most of you have heard of Tim Ferriss, right? He is most famous for the 4-Hour Workweek, and he also wrote Tools for Titans and Tribe of Mentors. Now, in those 2 books that I just mentioned, Tools for Titans and Tribe of Mentors, he used portions of interviews from his podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show. He compiled these interviews into voluminous, like massive books. And he doesn't include all of his guests 100% of the time, right? He chooses only the best parts of the best interviews to share on a different platform. Now, you don't have to wait to write a 300-page book or have 1,000 podcast episodes recorded before you publish. You can write a book with 5 episodes, 10 episodes, whatever it is that you have in the can. But you want to make sure that the people that you include in the book are in alignment with your message, your brand, and your personality. Now, a quick note on intellectual property. Some podcast hosts choose to include a waiver when they send out their preparation materials for the guest. The waiver can include language that lets them reuse the content and reuse the interview in multiple ways. So you can choose to create a waiver that works for you. I encourage you to seek out a good IP attorney before you make any big moves. Now, you do not have to publish volumes like Tim Ferriss. You can gather the material in your own way to showcase the best ideas and moments from your podcast to engage your audience in a new way, which leads me into number 3. Number 3, you want to answer the questions that you get from your audience. My friend and colleague, Bridget McGowan, did just that in the 2nd edition of her presentation skills book. She's a professional speaker and is in her 3rd season as host of Own the Microphone podcast. She has a huge collection of audience questions she's heard and fielded over the course of her speaking career. Bridget is just a cool person. And in the new edition of her book, she used several of those questions that she had gathered from audience members over years as a foundation for creating content in her book. Content that addresses burning questions people have had about how to make stellar presentations. Now, even if you aren't a speaker fielding questions on the road or from the stage, you can still gather questions from social media. If you have an active social media following, you can check out the comments you get when a new episode drops. If you are just starting to build your social media following, think about the other ways you are already engaging with your community. What questions do you get from clients and colleagues in your industry? Answer the questions that come in through LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as interpersonal meetings to expand the content that you create for your book. Now, number 4, you want to identify who is a future guest on your podcast. Who is reaching out asking you if they can be a guest? Can you interview them now for the book and air the episode at a future date? Your podcast has a specific flow, and you as the host know who will make a great next guest for your audience. Nurture the relationship with your guest and provide value to your listeners and your readers. It's a win-win-win. In addition to interviewing scheduled guests for your book, there's another way that you can use the legwork you are doing in building your guest list. You can target guests who are on your wish list and offer them an opportunity to be mentioned in the book if they are available for a podcast interview before a specific date. With a compelling business book that includes interviews from your guests, you are sharing a way for the guests you feature to increase their visibility and generate more authority in their industry. And who wouldn't want that? That brings me to number 5. Position yourself for your intentional next steps. The best thing about a book is that it creates a legacy for your podcast and it creates a legacy for you. You are bringing these other guests onto your platform to elevate an important message. You are elevating your own message, yes, but you're also elevating the message of people that you support and people that you are in alignment with. You have worked hard to get to your current level of success and have put in the time to develop a depth of experience that is unparalleled in your industry. You stand out in your field and still have more to give. When you think of the future of your podcast and your future as a leader in your industry, what are your logical next steps? What are your big dreams and goals? Use the topic of your book to give yourself momentum to get that started. Take your cues from the pieces of information that your listeners and readers have in common and share your message like you're having a conversation with that person. The depth of your conversation will depend on the length and type of book that you want to share with your audience, as well as the type of action you want your reader to take. How will your reader react when they read some or all of your book? What ideas within the book will prompt them to take action? How can you guide them toward the action you desire they take? Think of the ways that your book will extend the message of your podcast and how that aligns with your long-term plans. If you take these 5 ways to repurpose your podcast content, you will be set up for success in writing your book quickly and strategically. Number 1, guide your listeners on a journey. Number 2, transcribe the best parts of your interviews. Number 3, answer the questions from your audience. Number 4, identify who is a future guest on your podcast. Number 5, position yourself for intentional next steps. You are never starting from scratch when you are building your community of readers. As a podcaster and an influencer in your community, as well as an expert in your field, you have access to the minds of the people in your network. Your listeners are waiting to see what else you have to offer. You can leverage this season's podcast content to write a compelling business book.